Well, less than a week before phase two of the Lok Sabha voting takes place, the Prime Minister, of course, made that very controversial speech in Rajasthan, where the opposition, has called it hate speech. But there are a lot of different things moving on the ground right now. So we're going to look, first of all, at Rajasthan as a state. We're also going to look at the Prime Minister's speech, all of the responses that have come out of it, and where, is that a sort of a turning point of this election? Because there are a couple of things that we're reading, columns in the Indian Express, in the Hindu, in the Quint, about how maybe the 400, the 400 par, slogan has created some sort of overconfidence where the turnout was a little low. We're going to examine all of those things and see where we are right now. Saying hello to Pratik Vashne, who's a supporter. Remember, you can become a supporter of us by clicking on the subscribe button and subscribing. This is our sort of joint effort with the team at Quint. So you can look at the Quint website and the Quint YouTube page for more news from their end as well. Joining me right now to help us understand what is going on, Mr. Rajan Mahan is a very senior journalist who's always very closely looked at the state of Rajasthan. Also, Aditya Menon, political editor of Quint, who sits down with us every Wednesday to continue our conversations. Mr. Mahan and Aditya, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to get straight to it. Okay, Mr. Mahan, it happened in your state. The controversial, speech on Sunday, where the Prime Minister effectively said that the Congress will take your wealth down to your jewelry and your Mangalsutra and distribute it among the Muslims. He referred to the Muslims as ghuspates or infiltrators and people who have a lot of children. Since then, a lot has happened. But do you believe that this is some kind of turning point for this election? Has it made a difference? Or is it really, the media really over thinking these instances?
In terms of the ground impact of his speech, I can tell you that it has had some resonance in parts of Rajasthan, but to imagine that this has suddenly been able to achieve what possibly the Prime Minister and the BJP wanted to achieve through that speech, which is to polarize voters, from the ground reports that one is getting, from the reactions that one is getting from different parts of the state, it doesn't look like that the BJP's dream of polarizing the electorate is succeeding. The election in Rajasthan is actually is still sort of revolving largely around caste, largely around other issues, and not so much around this Hindu-Muslim sort of agenda that the BJP's had specifically in the last decade. Of course, it's a general agenda that they've had for more than 3-4 decades. It's an ideological sort of standpoint that they have on certain issues. I think the Prime Minister's speech, in a certain sense, is very clearly a sign that the BJP wants to turn this election and the discourse of this election around Hindu-Muslim, issues. They haven't been able to achieve that till the first phase. I don't think it's particularly happening, at least in Rajasthan. Yes, it's created a huge buzz because of the kind of comments that the Prime Minister made. It's not just that the Congress and the opposition has reacted. I think a large number of neutrals and concerned citizens have also been outraged at the kind of comments that have been made, and therefore while the BJP is hoping that this will lead to a kind of, Hindu-Muslim thing, it doesn't seem to be. Because in Rajasthan, for instance, I can tell you, even the Ram temple issue is not really as huge as the BJP was hoping it will be. It is other issues, like, for instance, in parts of Rajasthan, it is the Agniveer scheme that's creating a resonance. A lot of the younger generation is angry at the simple bread and butter issues, the fact that their lives haven't really improved dramatically in these 10 years. They're still remaining jobless. They're still remaining rather desperate in their lives. And so therefore, I think in many ways, the discourse that the BJP wants to set is what is behind the, rather offensive speech that the Prime Minister made in Banswara. And I mean, it is in the tribal belt, and it provoked an immediate reaction. Yes, from in Banswara,
The
it's
audience.
actually an alliance candidate who's fighting, but it created a buzz within the political sort of leadership levels. At the grassroots levels, it's not going as easily as the BJP might have hoped. Faye?
And then that's really interesting. Aditya, there were some theories also that said that the first phase of election, because the BJP slogan is Char So Par, there might have been a lot of people who were supporters who felt, hey, you know what, he's going to win anyway. Even if I don't go out and vote, it's all right. And that did that lead to a lower turnout? Is that what is triggering a lot of sort of, it does feel like parties have changed gear after the first phase of voting, doesn't it?
So 400 par, it can have an effect on both BJP as well as opposition
Mm.
voters. Even an opposition voter, it's possible, starts believing that Modi is winning anyway. So what's the point of me wasting my vote? So I mean, it can cut both ways in that sense. But I think what has become evident is that. The areas where BJP is winning, probably the competition isn't as much, and also the voters' enthusiasm isn't what it was in 2019. 2019, we must remember that Pulwama, Balakot had just happened. There was a nationalistic wave. Clearly, there is no wave this time, and to get 400 par, you need that kind of a wave, which probably isn't there. So that's, I think, another reason why BJP is a little bit nervous, and they do probably seem that feel that the performance and development oriented promises aren't delivering them to the extent that they
Mm.
were hoping. So probably that's why they are trying these tactics as well.
It's also interesting because when the Prime Minister's speech happened on Sunday, there was a reaction largely on social media to that speech, and everyone was watching. At least among us as journalists, we were all watching to see if the BJP will try and explain it or try and sort of roll it back in some way, but they have not. They've stood their ground. After that, we've had Yogi Adityanath, who made a statement saying the Congress will bring in Sharia law. So he took it one step further, which is in his personality to do. He tends to do that. There's no mention of anything of that sort in the manifesto of the Congress party whatsoever. But at this point, I don't think anyone's reading that manifesto. Then it went one step further. Sam Petroda made a statement, and this is being called motor mouth, where he actually suggested that, the US has a inheritance tax. Maybe we should discuss that. The Prime Minister has picked that up now and said that they're going to take your wealth, not just when you're alive, but even after you're dead. So this is now turned into, we've had Priyanka Gandhi respond as well. So it's sort of taken on a life of its own. Mr. Mahan, do you believe the inheritance tax issue and the fact that the Congress at this point has shot itself in the foot, like it tends to do before an election on a regular basis, is going to make a difference in the BJP's favor?
Well, to some extent, it could, especially with the urban voters and upper caste voters, who, in any case, to be honest, tend to be somewhat more inclined to favor the BJP. What it does is, of course, that it creates a certain nervousness, perhaps, in many sections of the middle class also, which could damage the Congress prospects. But to be very honest, a lot of the big buzz that keeps happening on social media doesn't necessarily get reflected in the on the ground situation. And the inheritance tax or the estate duties, these are issues which ideally need to be left to experts to discuss and debate. Of course, Congress stalwarts like Mr. Petroda have this tendency of turning even election sort of moments into some kind of college level debates where they're trying to score points, etc., and project their own
Yeah.
intellectual sort of finesse, without realizing that elections are very, very sensitive, very, very delicate business,
Yes.
and you cannot come up with dubious theories and fancy sort of you know rationale for rather esoteric theories. They need to be left we need to have a saner, a more sensible debate for sure, because the inequalities in the country have grown so huge. We do need to discuss and debate issues of this kind. But are elections just the right time or the right forum for all of that?
Mm.
Doubt if that is true. So, in a certain sense, you're right. The Congress has, to a certain extent, shot itself in the foot. Put one caveat: how many, what percentage of Indians are actually likely to be impacted by estate duties
Mm.
or inheritance taxes? I mean, there's a large chunk of this country. I mean, 80 crore people in this country, according to the government's own claims, are still just, getting rations free from the government and surviving. So, where people, the average common citizen in this
Yeah.
country, the Aam Aadmi is battling for sheer survival, there to think that an issue like the inheritance tax, yes, it'll be greatly popular among the chattering classes. It may also be, it will help a lot of people in Delhi to come up with, the commentariat to come up with their own fancy theories and their fancy analysis, etc. But on the ground, is it going to make a
Mm.
huge dent to the Congress prospects? Doubt it very much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
will give a talking point to the BJP for sure.
It's interesting though, because the prime minister has said in his speech, I think it was today, where he said it is the middle class money that they're going to go after. So he was very clear. He's not talking about the super rich. He said middle class money is what they will go after. Aditya, here's a question for you. And I always throw the hard ones to you, right? Harsh Kumar says, would the prime minister's speech be called a planned action by the BJP? So is it part of strategy? Or this, I think he's referring to what happened on Sunday. Or are they just panicking after phase one? Does the BJP ever panic?
No, I think mostly what the Prime Minister says is almost always planned. And even if there is, I mean, I think there is a realistic understanding in the BJP that 400 par is not that achievable. But even then, this is definitely planned. The Prime Minister really increases the tempo gradually as the campaign progresses. Also, this was aimed at areas going to polls in the second phase, particularly southern Rajasthan, where the murder of the tailor had also taken place. It's also coastal Karnataka, both
Yeah.
areas where polarization tactics have in the past worked to some extent. So it was aimed at that. The second part, which I found interesting, is that BJP is turning this entire discourse of so both social justice as well as wealth redistribution, they're giving it a communal spin. So PM said that the wealth, or your wealth, will be taken and given to
Exactly.
Muslims and
Muslims.
to infiltrators. Today we had ANI putting out a misleading kind of a post saying that all Muslim communities in Karnataka are availing of reservation. Even though it's not true, only OBCs among Muslims,
Yeah.
many of whom would have been SC had they not been Muslim, only they avail of reservation. Sayyid, Sheikh, Pathan, the other elites among Muslims, they do not have reservations. So it's a misleading post. But so even social justice politics is now being given a communal spin. So
Communal.
this, I
Yeah.
think, is a very, very deliberate strategy by the BJP.
Yeah. And this is the
Oh, Faye, can I
fascinating
just
bit, right?
add to what?
Yes.
Can I just
Yes.
add to what?
Please.
Just adding on to what Aditya is saying, it's definitely a well-planned move, and it's, I think, also at one level a counter to that Congress campaign where they've spoken about how this 400 par was actually a ploy to bring in massive changes or major changes into the Constitution of India. And there has been also the whole idea of getting those from the backward sections, SCs, STs, OBC, to start believing that the reservations may be scrapped. And that is something that the BJP is really worried about, because it is something that has had a resonance. There have been many people in different parts of Rajasthan who have reacted and said, well, we are a little concerned about the reservations being scrapped. So I think this whole attempt to change the social justice narrative from being, focused around neutral issues of social justice to giving it a communal spin is
Yeah.
what the BJP is trying to try and neutralize what on the ground the Congress had virtually achieved in the first phase and till 3 or 4 days ago, at spreading a kind of narrative in which it looked like the BJP was going to, threaten India's democracy, India's constitution, and especially target towards changing the whole, reservation issue, and bringing in upper caste, the backwards among the upper caste, or on economic basis to try and dissolve the reservations and the quotas which the backwards have enjoyed in the last 70 years. So I think it's a systematic move to try and uh, cut down that narrative which the Congress was trying to create on the ground. Faye?
So, Mr. Mahan, in the column that you wrote on the Quint website, and for our audience, you can go to the Quint website and take a look at the column that Mr. Mahan has written. You talked about the fact that, the Congress has been talking about unemployment, it's been talking about inflation, it's been talking about those kind of issues, whereas the BJP sort of, list of issues has not really struck a chord. Do you believe that that's going to continue to make a difference now going into the vote for Rajasthan in the second phase?
Yes, I think so. As Aditya mentioned, I don't think the Modi wave is as huge or anywhere as huge as it was in the last two elections. Also, Faye, people are now beginning to question the performance of the BJP MPs. At least in Rajasthan, there are seats where the two-time sitting MPs are in trouble. And, even big guns like Om Birla, the Speaker of the Assembly, is facing quite a challenge in Kota. And even Gajendra Singh Shekhawat in Jodhpur is not as comfortable. He may still squeeze through, but is not as comfortable and is not going to have the kind of grand majority with which he won his last two elections. So what I'm saying is that people are beginning to question their local MPs. What have you done to improve my area? What have you done to improve my life situation? So in that sense, I think the bread and butter issues, because in Hindi they say bhoga hua sach. The truth about the lived realities of my life is what is impacting people. And I think 10 years is long enough to for a large section or a large chunk of Indians to get back to a semblance of normalcy and start looking at issues which affect their lives and not be swayed only by some grand nationalistic discourse or this whole effort at, Hindu khatre mein hai and just vote on religious lines. I think the BJP may well realize that this time around the situation on the ground is substantially changed.
Totally different.
Faye?
Aditya, I do want to talk to you about, that one case in Karnataka, which I think is going to make a difference. The Neha Hiremat case, there was a young girl who was stabbed to death on campus of her college in Hubli Dharwad. She's the daughter of a Congress leader. The accused, who is now in police custody, is a classmate, a young Muslim man who they apparently now on one hand you've had the chief minister who made a statement saying, hey, this is not a law and order issue. Siddaramaiah said that this was they were they had a friendship that went bad and this is why it happened. The girl's father has now alleged love jihad. There are protests happening in that area saying that this is love jihad. They're asking for him to be encountered or for him to be hung. Now this is what has happened so far. Do you think it's going to dent the Congress's sort of hold in Karnataka at this point? Because even with the blast in the restaurant, the idea was that the Congress is going soft, and that is why people are not safe.
So there is considerable mobilization on this issue. Now, obviously, as the Karnataka government has been saying, this is not a communal killing, and we had another killing of Rukhsar by her Hindu, whatever. I mean, a relationship gone, live-in partner, which went bad, and she was killed. So, I mean, that case didn't get the kind of attention this case is getting, and because mainly the media tends to highlight these. Kind of cases much more. Having said that, it is having some impact on the ground in Karnataka. There is considerable mobilization by Hindutva organizations on the ground as well as on social media. I think it may just help BJP overcome some of the local questions they were facing in seats where their MPs hadn't performed. For instance, Uttar Kannada, there is considerable resentment. They say we have been voting BJP for 6 elections now, and we have not gotten anything. There is for an airport we have to go either to Goa or to Mangalore. So in a seat like that, or in a seat like Belagavi, where the BJP has imported a candidate like Jagadish Shettar from another district. Again, another place where they were facing considerable local issues. So maybe in these seats where battles were much more localized and development issues were taking center stage, it's possible that BJP might be able to sort of turn it again back into a ideological issue. But all said and done, BJP and its ally and its independent ally last time had 25 out of 28 seats in Karnataka. I don't think they will still be able to repeat that performance. That is the problem BJP is facing across. Even as
Yeah.
it claims it wants to, gain 70 odd seats more from its 303, most of the states where it is already powerful, it has already saturated. So, despite all these attempts, I think at most these can be read as attempts by the BJP to cut its losses rather than any realistic chance of expanding.
Pratap Banu Mehta wrote this really interesting column in the Indian Express as well, where he sort of echoes what Mr. Rajan Mahan is saying to us, which is that it's been 10 years with the BJP, and there are now several things that people are considering perhaps that were not around in 2019. One of the things he talks about is even though there's no accusation of corruption that has stuck to the Prime Minister, he personally seems not a corrupt politician, he seems incorruptible. The Na Khane Dunga bit is drawing a question because it's difficult to sort of say. So this was a very prominent Na Khaunga Na Khane Dunga, that they have invited a lot of very corrupt opposition members into the party, given them tickets overnight. It's difficult, I think, for any Indian to say that in terms of corruption, things have gotten better in lived experience, like you were saying. Our experience on the ground might not have changed that much. So is that going to be a difficult thing to sort of push forward, that this is a party that stands against corruption very clearly because they have not prosecuted per se the old corrupts? They are now part of the BJP in some way or the other. And so the Prime Minister by himself is not able to be, carry this on his shoulders. Mr. Mahan?
Oh, you are asking me. Well, I mean, all I can say is that this na khaunga na khane dunga, even the na khaunga seems a little dubious, no? After what we've heard about and what we've seen about the electoral bonds. I mean, look at the way they have squeezed people, pressurized people, got their. I mean, Aditya can certainly give you a much better perspective on that. I can only say that, if you look at the electoral bond story and the details of that story, they seem pretty horrific. I think there is massive clash of interests happening in so many places. The arm twisting leading to money. I mean, even the pharma companies, which were under a cloud, donating to the BJP and then getting away. I think there is a huge question mark if you look at the electoral bond story. Secondly, what about their own people who in different states have hardly been, the epitome of honesty and incorruptibility? Even assuming that Mr. Modi is spotlessly clean, the fact is that the Karnataka government, for instance, was notorious for, what was it, 40% commission, 40% commission sarkar, it was being called. in Rajasthan, also during the previous regime, I mean, during the previous BJP regime, it wasn't as if there were no allegations. There were all kinds of bunglings in collaboration with Lalit Modi that Vasundhara Raje was accused of. So it's not as if these last 10 years the BJP has been spotlessly clean. Secondly, now that they've inducted such a large majority of rather dubious characters from all political dispensations. I mean, in Rajasthan itself, we've had Mr. Mahendrajit Malviya, who's competing now as a BJP candidate, was a senior cabinet minister under the Gehlot government, had all kinds of corruption allegations, switched to the BJP, and is now is now their candidate in the tribal belt. Uh, Similarly, in states after states. I mean, Ashok Chavan, I was just watching yesterday on Twitter, somebody who had posted what the Prime Minister had been saying about Ashok Chavan in 2014 and how he's now going ahead and campaigning and saying, oh, what a big asset Mr. Chavan is for us. So these kinds of questions and these, what should one say? I mean, the dilemmas that we can see very clearly. Is something that's going to hurt the BJP. And I think if the wave is petering out, if the Modi magic is finally coming to some kind of lesser sort of effect, then these issues which people have seen across the country, whether it is Himanta Biswa going and joining them, whether it is Ajit Pawar, whether it is a Mahendrajit Malviya in Rajasthan, and there are a whole lot of dubious characters from Rajasthan Congress who've switched to the BJP. And I don't think anybody in their right senses can even remotely call all of them very upright examples of politicians who needed to be quickly inducted into the BJP if the BJP actually stands for incorruptibility. So there is a
Yeah, in
stain
fact,
there, and the
today,
is just sounding like a rather hollow jumla now.
yeah, yeah. No, in fact, today, Mr. Man, the EOW, the Economic Offences Wing of the Maharashtra Police, closed the case against Ajit Pawar in the cooperative bank scam. And his wife and his nephew. His nephew remains with the Sharad Pawar faction, but effectively they've said that there's no criminal, action, or there's no wrongdoing here. So we're closing the case against these people. A closure report has been filed today. So for people in Maharashtra, remember this cooperative bank scam was a large point on which the BJP and the Prime Minister campaigned last time, saying this is the scam in which they have taken so much money out of your pockets. And now that scam has now conveniently been closed. The case has gone away. So obviously that's going to come up. But, Aditya, I do want to ask you this. When a large number of people switch sides in the manner that we've seen happen now, on one hand, yes, it dents the image of the party. It also dilutes its distinctiveness, as in what do you need to be or who do you need to be a member of the BJP or to be a spokesperson of the BJP. Because right now, honestly, even as a journalist, when I see a soundbite of someone, I have to go back to check hang on, I don't remember. This person used to be a Congress spokesperson, they're now BJP spokespeople. So even in my head, it's starting to blur. But will there be dissonance within the BJP? People who've been waiting their turn, who've now lost the ticket to someone who's just come in parachuted, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago from the other side. They get a ticket, they get to contest. And we've seen in the past that causes a little bit of unhappiness among the loyalists who've been working for so many years.
No doubt,
Is that happening?
it does. It does, no doubt. But it's also the case that everyone, I think the BJP has become such a centralized party that for both resources and electoral winnability, they have to rely on Prime Minister Modi. So in that sense, that gives local leaders much less leverage vis-a-vis the central leadership.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of distinctiveness, we must also remember the kind of adaptability some of these turncoats have shown. Himanta Biswa Sarma, he is now as more Hindutva than probably many Hindutva leaders were. And he has always been like that. He used to be with the All Assam Students Union, and then he joined hands with the Congress and became completely Congressy, and now he's with the BJP. He is more BJP than most BJP people. So, I mean, all these leaders are pretty adaptable, and they speak the language of their party quite well in that sense.
So the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, of course, the question of the Election Commission, and this is to both of you. We'll start with Mr. Mahan. The Election Commission, when the press asked the Election Commission about the Prime Minister's speech on Sunday, it was no comments. Since then, we know that the Congress party themselves, with Abhishek Manu Singhvi, have filed a complaint asking the Election Commission to look into this matter. There's been no update from the Commission itself. Is this, in your opinion, Mr. Mahan, normal procedure that takes some time to look into? Today there was some source-based, soundbite saying it's being looked into. Is this how it normally happens, or do you think the Election Commission is being, let's say, quieter than it should be?
Well, I mean, if the processes are going to take so long that their action virtually becomes redundant, then I think they need to speed up their processes. But frankly, there's not that much that one can hope for from the Election Commission of India. They don't seem to be, going proactive when it is BJP leaders who are in the dock or who are being questioned for whatever they've said and then in this case, of course, it's the top sort of functionary of the entire country and the BJP who is, but what is interesting, Faye, is not just that the Election Commission is maintaining this silence, because they've virtually been silent for so many years when it comes to the BJP. It's not the first instance. I mean, I remember even in Rajasthan elections, we did have a number of complaints of these hate speeches, and nothing really materialized. So I think somewhere the whole majoritarian mindset seems to have afflicted a large section of India's institutions also. And sadly, far from being tough to, like, say, Mr. Seshan in the past, to try and ensure a level playing field, what we're seeing is that the Election Commission kind of, connives or gives it a royal ignore and doesn't even respond. It's not just parties. I mean, for heaven's sake, in this one, there are thousands and thousands of citizens of the country who are complaining to you. It's not just a partisan thing. It is something where people who believe in certain values, who stand for an India which will revolve around equality in terms of religion and caste, and there's going to be no discrimination on those kinds of things. It is people who stand for those values, who stand for a secular lifestyle in this country, who are being betrayed. And sadly, we must, of course, remember that the Election Commission hasn't really distinguished itself even in the 2019 elections. And this time around, they seem pretty passive as far as this particular. I mean, you can't have a commission, or what uses a commission if it comes up with any lame duck statement or action well after the whole incident has played itself out, and there's whatever electoral impact is to happen has already happened, and there's been no reaction whatsoever. In contrast, when it is opposition leaders, the commission seems fairly proactive. So I think somewhere this whole notion of the Election Commission enforcing a free and fair election in this country is kind of getting diluted, and people are seeing that the EC is becoming just another institution like the ED or the CBI, which is kind of
Mr. Mahan,
collapsing in the last few years.
Was it always like this? Now we remember, some of us remember Mr. Seshan. There might be younger audience members who don't remember what he was like. But what was the Election Commission, say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago? Was it like this?
I think the Election Commission has always been full of bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats do tend to favor those who are in power to a large extent. That's the training that they receive all through their lives, and that's the way they tend to function. But I don't think there was this kind of brazenness and this kind of inaction that we now see. If there was a particularly offensive thing that may have been said in the heat of an electoral battle, they at least went ahead and, rapped people on their knuckles. Even if it was not very stern or tough action, you could see that the commission was sending off some notices, asking for explanations, etc., which in itself then had a kind of salutary impact on others from going ahead and becoming ballistic in the electoral sort of arena. So, in that sense, I think things have transformed dramatically. A large number of India's institutions, even if they were not exemplary, I don't think they were, but there were moments of exceptions, but not as a regular sort of habit that they are going ahead and, I mean, month after month after month, we've seen how the ED, for instance, has gone ahead. It's very strange. They seem to pick up cases only at the time when some, state is going for election, and then those, opposition leaders are targeted, and then the issue is kind of forgotten and swept under the carpet, and then nobody even remembers what the ED is doing or not doing on those issues. Quite often, the ED actions have been pretty dubious, and then they just let it sort of, die out. The issues created, for instance, in the Rajasthan elections, the Congress chief was targeted by the ED. Since then, we've seen a kind of a sanata. I mean, there's a complete pin drop silence on those cases. So we haven't seen any great movement forward. If there were really such serious allegations or such a serious situation in which the Congress chief in Rajasthan was involved, then I think they should have been going even more aggressively in these last 4 5 months when the BJP has been ruling in Rajasthan. And yet we find that, so in that sense, you find they thought to give a kind of an electoral advantage to those who rule over them at the center. And sadly, the EC seems to be following in the same sort of route. Faye.
Aditya, what can the EC actually do? Like, what is within its powers? We read that the EC has censured a particular candidate or a campaigner. Can they suspend someone from being a candidate? Can they remove someone from the election? What is on paper, within the EC's power to do?
So, depending on the offense, I think in the past for hate speeches, they have suspended a few people from campaigning for 2 days or 3 days or some period like that. That has happened even for BJP leaders, if I'm not mistaken. But I think where the EC is really going wrong are in the absolutely black and white cases of model code of conduct violations, like what was committed by their Meerut candidate Arun Govil, in which he's carrying a picture of Lord Ram with him. So it's that is clear violation of the People Representation of People Act and the Model Code of Conduct. KM Shaji of I don't know, Mr. Shaji of IUML, he was disbarred from contesting for 6 years in Kerala for a similar offense, asking votes in the name of religion. So that is the extent to which punishments can go for a absolutely similar offense to what Shaji had committed in Kerala. But I don't. The BJP hasn't. The EC hasn't acted against the BJP candidate in Meerut. The BJP unit in Telangana put out a video asking for votes in the name of Ram Mandir. There are hoardings saying by the BJP saying whenever if you want to protect dharma, you have to vote for BJP. So it is getting absolutely blatant. Even if you discount the PM speech, you still have very black and white cases of seeking votes in the name of religion. And yet the EC hasn't taken any action. So it's actually pretty pathetic on part of the election commission presently.
Yeah, and it's also now reached a point where there's no gray area. We're not speculating, oh, is the election commission going slow? If the election commission is not doing its job, I think that's a fair thing at this point to just call out, that they're simply not doing their job. We seem to have lost Rajan Mahan, but we'll try and get him back. I do want to ask you, Aditya, about the Surat candidate. This, again, fascinating thing has happened in Surat. The BJP candidate has already won the election. It's been declared in his favor. Not a vote been cast because the Congress candidate nomination was basically disqualified. The other candidates, 8 other candidates, withdrew their candidature, leaving this person the only one standing, and hence he has won. Is that normal? Aditya, you draw a question about what's actually
Yeah.
going on here.
I think there is some great degree of compromise that has happened. I mean, the Congress's own Surat unit has accused their own candidate of compromising with the BJP. It's not something I'm coming up with, because it's a bit spectacular that three of the people who are proposing the candidate's nomination, all of them, their signatures are found to be wrong, and they are relatives of two are relatives of the candidate. One is a friend. So that happens. Then suddenly the independent candidates, they all decide to withdraw their candidature. There's a scroll story. The independent candidate is telling the reporter that, oh, I wanted to contest only because of the traffic woes in Surat, but BJP has assured me that they'll address all the traffic woes, so I have decided to withdraw. The BSP candidate decided to withdraw and he went AWOL, stopped answering their own party's calls. So it's absolutely, I mean, it's bizarre what happened in Surat. But what I don't understand from on part of the BJP is that Surat is a seat they got 70% of the votes last time. They will win that seat anyway. And so why go through this entire elaborate process? I think it's also this desire on the part of Mr. C.R. Patil to sort of show complete domination of the political sphere in Gujarat, that people are not even contesting against us. It's like it's going beyond 400 par. It's like there is no, we don't need elections to win in Gujarat. It's almost like that. So it is just to make a statement. They probably engineered this entire thing in Surat.
Mr. Mahan, Surat, you find that surprising? Because, I mean, of all places, Gujarat is, I would assume, a place where the BJP doesn't need to, do things like this.
I don't find it surprising. I find it shocking. And I think it, at one level, reflects the kind of brazenness with which the BJP now is operating in the country. They believe they can get away with anything. And to a large extent, if you look at it very, with your eyes open, in many, many ways, the BJP is getting away with whatever they want to get away with. I mean, for so many years, the Supreme Court didn't even bother to hear the electoral bonds case. Do you realize that we all could have become aware of all of these things if the EC had listened to I mean, if they'd heard the entire case, and if some of these truths that I must compliment the Quint also for coming out with. I mean, the brilliant coverage from the Quint on the electoral bond story. And a large number of other, I mean, there's another friend, Nitin Sethi, and his group, the Reporters Collective, they've also come out. So the kind of details, they could have come out much, much earlier than what we've seen. So to a large extent, I think the Surat situation reflects the BJP's increasing, should one say, arrogance, or their complete overconfidence that they can get away with anything. And it is, I think, this overconfidence that at one level is going to be jolted if India's voters uh, reflect the kind of ground realities that one is seeing in Rajasthan. That, I mean, and one is not saying that Sachin Pilot, of course, has made the claim that in Rajasthan the Congress is going to get more seats than the BJP out of the 25 total 25. I don't believe that is happening, but certainly most political observers in the state are now going to be surprised if the Congress doesn't get quite a handful of seats in the desert state. So, in that sense, the Surat, saga to me, what it tells me is that. So, what about the voters of Surat?
Yeah,
Shouldn't the EC, and it brings me to the EC's
absolutely.
question again. I mean, shouldn't the EC have rethought this entire exercise? Shouldn't the EC have said, okay, so since there's only one candidate left, we're scrapping this entire election, we're going to have a re-election in this particular constituency? I mean, for heaven's sake, The people of Surat deserve, even if the vast majority of them, say 70% or 60% or whatever, would have voted a BJP candidate in, but let them at least vote, let them exercise their franchise. Here you're depriving people of their basic rights. And how could the EC overlook that? How could the
Yes.
EC's representative in Surat not have had a proper confabulation? And if it did happen that all the top guns in the EC and Delhi also went ahead and discussed this issue, and yet they all decided in their wisdom that, well, yes, we can allow just one person as less than 50%. I mean, just sounds terribly sordid to me. What the BJP is trying to do is, I think, what Aditya said. They are looking at a snowballing effect. They're looking at impressing the voters across the country that, look, there's no point in even opposing the BJP anymore. We are
Yes.
so strongly placed that, all parties are kind of deserting. Most of the leaders are coming and joining us. And there's really no contest. Vichar so
Yeah.
par nahi. I mean, I'm wondering, so there was somebody who jocularly said on Twitter that, I mean, they could well be getting now. Next step is that the BJP might start getting seats in Bangladesh and Nepal and Sri Lanka and all of those elections also. We may
Yeah.
have the BJP. I mean, it's a rather flippant comment, but
I
I
think
think
I think
at
this
some
was
level it
Revant.
reflects the
Yes.
frustration that a lot of people have begun to feel about the way things in the country are being managed.
I think
Faye?
it was Revant Reddy who was speaking to the press, and he said that, listen, we're talking about 400 par. They've maxed out certain states, so they will either do the same or less. And he said in all of South India, they're not going to get more than 15 seats. So there's no way they can get 400 unless they're also going to win in Nepal and Bangladesh and Pakistan as well. That was the statement that he had made.
Okay, so I don't know. Was it Revant Reddy? I don't know. I read it in somebody else's tweet, and
Yeah,
I mean, it stayed in my mind because I found it quite hilarious.
right.
But at the
So
same level, it kind of, reflected the way things look like. I mean, if this is going to happen, then, we've seen arm twisting and people joining their party. We've seen arm twisting and people giving buying electoral bonds and, investing in the BJP. I mean, for heaven's sake, then let's finish with this charade. If this is how it's going to be, then elections just look like a elaborate sort of exercise which is completely meaningless. Let's scrap it. I mean, if this is how you want to do things, that people are going to be, either seduced, डरा दिया या धमका दिया और या उनको अपने तरफ आपने ललचा लिया. That's what is happening. So either you're seducing people to join you, giving, the carrot and stick policy, and you're getting a whole election virtually turned meaningless in Surat, and the EC very happily announcing that, yes, indeed,
agreed.
they've got
Yeah.
one seat. Well,
Samdan Dandabet, they say.
doesn't cut.
That brings us to the end of this conversation, though. Thank you both, gentlemen, for spending time and helping us understand this. It's a fascinating phase two as well, that we're going to see voting in across Rajasthan, across Karnataka, several other very interesting seats, candidates in the fray. We'll be here on a daily basis, and of course with Quint on a weekly basis. Take a look at the Quint website. You'll see Mr. Mahan's column. You'll see all the work that Aditya and his team are making. At this point that they're working on the ground. For us at Beetroot, do download our app. We put out the news in the simplest form fashion, in the easiest way, to consume. And we have a membership open on YouTube right now where you can sign up and support our team. Anuj, Aman, Pishavri, Pratik, thank you for supporting us. And I appeal to the rest of our viewers to support us as well. Also, in exactly 10 minutes, I will be back with the live reading of the news, which is a new format we're working on. So do stay with us, and we'll read the news together and everything interesting that's happened today. That's at 8 o'clock. So stay with us. Come back for that live. Thank you so much for watching. We'll continue, of course, to track this fascinating election.